All right, we press on. I love this conversation. I read this piece by Jason Lloyd, senior columnist for The Athletic, about Shedeur Sanders. And Jason, thank you for joining us. I appreciate you coming on because you wrote a piece, Shedeur Sanders' saga needs to end for the Browns to move on. Give everybody a quick synopsis of maybe why this piece came about. I'm assuming the Joe Flacco news had something to do with it.
Yeah, he's more of a distraction right now than he is a help, it seems like, from all accounts. When you trade Joe Flacco and you create a spot at your backup quarterback spot, from all indications, this isn't official yet, obviously, but the way Kevin Stefanski was sort of hinting around yesterday, talking about you want to protect your players and player development and all that, it certainly feels as if Bailey Zappi is going to be promoted from the practice squad over Shedeur into the backup spot. That tracks with all of Zach Jackson's reporting on this, our Browns beat writer. Yeah. It's everything sort of that's been indicated to me. No one says it directly, but that's just certainly been the way that it's felt for a while. That's the whole reason Bailey was here. Why else would you sign a fourth quarterback? You already have 3 quarterbacks on your 53, and then you go add a quarterback on the practice squad. The only logical reason to do that is if you fall into a situation like this where you need to insert a backup quarterback, and they clearly don't feel comfortable yet with Shedeur. And if I'm being totally honest, I am so tired of talking about the third string quarterback. Like I'm done. I'm over it. What other team in the league is talking about the third string quarterback? So I've written a couple of pieces on it, but I've tried to avoid it as much as I can. But when you make a move like this, when you trade Joe Flacco, when you create a spot and then you still refuse to move him up, if and when they do decide to do that, at that point, I think we have to have a conversation about it. And the conversation is, what is going on? Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, we've come full circle here, Jay. We are writing about the coverage. We're covering the coverage. Like, that's how wild this has gotten in terms of the nexus of the universe here and the way this is. Now, what I'm fascinated about is this. I was at the CU showcase. I was there. I know Jimmy Haslam was there. I saw the whole Browns contingent, had a long conversation with Kev. They went out to dinner with Shedeur. They know he drives a Bentley around the campus in Boulder. Didn't they know this was coming with Shedeur?
Yes. Yes. Okay. Of course they knew. I remember talking to people with the Browns prior to the draft, and they were like, and basically the messaging to me was, yes, he had special privileges. It's Prime's kid. What do you expect? But he's not a bad kid. Like, they really liked the person of Shedeur. And by the way, I have to agree with that. Not that I've spent a ton of time around him. I haven't. It's been very limited. But he comes off as extremely likable. He went right to work, like visiting kids in the inner city. He goes to high school football games on Friday nights and takes pictures with the kids and signs autographs. He loves to joke around. Like, he's extremely likable. Yes. But he just casts this shadow over everything that is just like, what they've done, in essence, they took a quarterback in the 3rd round who they actually like in Dillon Gabriel, and it sort of cut the legs out from under Dillon, because Dillon is answering all these nonsensical questions about Shedeur, and everything Dillon says gets twisted. And what was that? A shot at Shedeur? He makes a flippant comment on the sidelines in the preseason about there are entertainers and there are competitors, and everyone sort of runs like, oh, well, you must be talking about Shedeur. It's like, guys, he's a rookie NFL quarterback trying to find his way in the league. And he has to put up with this. Like, what are you doing? You're stunting the one that you really like with whatever is going on over here. And that's why I wrote, I honestly, like, I'm not trying to be dramatic with this. I don't see any other alternative. Either ownership is pushing this on them, which is not entirely out of the question, or they are so afraid of having another Baker Mayfield situation blow up on him. He's not good enough to promote, but they're scared of what he may become 2 or 3 years from now. So they're just going to hold on to him and keep him on the 53. Who else does this? Like, look at the Philadelphia Eagles. Draft Kyle McCord in the 6th round, cut him at the end of camp, which is very logical for 5th and 6th round picks, and they put him on the practice squad. That's the logical way to handle a quarterback you're trying to develop for the long term. But the Browns are eating up a spot on their 53 with them, but they won't promote them. Yet they're promoting the practice squad quarterback over top of them. So it just, there's a lot that's going on, and not a whole lot of it makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, it is fascinating because you look at it, the number of quarterbacks that were taken towards that bottom couple of rounds of the draft. You mentioned Kyle McCord, who set all sorts of records after he left Ohio State and went to Syracuse. You have Quinn Ewers, who was drafted down there, who was good enough to hold off Arch Manning, at least the perception of Arch Manning, for a while there at Texas.
Now we know why he held off Arch Manning.
Exactly. Don't ruin my narrative here, Jason. But listen, both of those guys. You also have Will Howard, who's coming off winning a national championship at Ohio State, who's sitting there, down there, I know he's on IR, but he's with the Steelers. And the one that's getting talked about out of all of this is Shedeur Sanders. Now, I do understand from what I've gathered from talking to people is he's not ready yet. We'd like to develop him. We'd like him to be in a situation, and this is what I've been told, to be where the week of practice is designed for him, designed specifically for him, and set him up to succeed when he goes out and plays. Same thing as Dillon Gabriel, I guess. But Gabriel was the backup, so I guess they thought he was further along in his development.
Now think about that for a second. Think about the logic of that, because they had no problem making Dillon Gabriel the backup to Joe Flacco, knowing if Joe goes down, Dillon would have to go in and run Joe's plays or whatever it is.
I think it's a telltale sign of how they view each player.
How much more are you saying you have to strip down this offense to make it friendly enough for Shedeur? That's what they're saying. And by the way, what Dillon was running last week wasn't all that complicated. They had the guardrails up and the safety belts on for Dillon in his first start against Minnesota. It's understandable why. He's a third-round rookie making his first start.
Look at the defense he's going against.
Week. You're going overseas, so it's not a normal practice week. You're going against a defensive coordinator who, by the way, was the backup to the job. The runner-up to the job here when you hired Jim Schwartz a couple years ago. So there was a lot working against him. I understand why it was sort of a rudimentary playbook. And you would think that they would build on it from week to week. But if you're telling me you don't have faith in Shedeur to run a fairly rudimentary offense right now, again, what are we doing here? I totally get the idea of you have a developmental quarterback you're trying to bring along. The Browns haven't had a quarterback in 25 years. And they're probably going to take another in the first round next year with 2 first-round picks. So he's just getting buried further and further down the depth chart. Again, a situation, not to keep going back to the Eagles, but it makes sense why you would have Kyle McCord on the practice squad. If he takes 2 or 3 years to develop, okay, you have a Super Bowl MVP in the role right now. It makes perfect sense to bring a guy along slowly. In this situation, it doesn't make any sense to me. If he's not good enough to even be the backup, he shouldn't be on the team.
Yeah, I think the situation obviously matters. You're right. You look at the 2 teams that we're interested in that we know of in Philadelphia and Baltimore. What are those locker rooms and organizations entrenched in stability like nobody's business in terms of the way that those rooms are built and the way those organizations are built. So I get it. And they probably thought they could withstand. So that leads me to this question. Who's to blame? Is it why is he available to talk? Should he be available to talk? Most third string quarterbacks are not asked questions, but also, I don't want to lump all of these players together because their situations are very different, but it's why Colin Kaepernick had a difficult time being a backup in the NFL and landing a job. It's a difficult reason why Tim Tebow had a difficult time being a backup in the NFL when there's extenuating circumstances surrounding the player and a player that doesn't play. Do you have to insulate them? Where does some of the blame in this saga around the group fall, Jason?
No, it's a great question. I actually probably enraged many of my media brethren last week. I went on the radio here last week and was yelling, "Stop talking to the third string quarterback. What are we doing? Why is the media continuing to talk to the third string quarterback?" And I put that on us. But at the same time, the Browns, I said, it's 45 minutes that reporters are in the locker room. Tell them to go sit in the hot tub for 45 minutes. Lock the doors, gag them, tie them to a chair, whatever you have to do. Keep them out of the locker room and help yourself. And yes, I know that's a horrible thing to say as a reporter because we're constantly fighting for more access. But obviously, this is a very different situation that we're talking about. If he's a starting quarterback, even if he's the number 2 quarterback, it's a different conversation. He's the number 3 quarterback. And I did find it interesting. Yesterday, he was not to be found in the locker room during open availability. Dillon talked. It's quarterback day on Wednesday, so that Dillon talked like the starter always does. Bailey Zappi was nowhere to be found. He's normally in there in that open session, and Shedeur was missing as well. And it for the Browns, that's smart. Keep him out there for right now until things settle down. It's such a strange situation. But this is the Browns. This is what they do. They invite car crashes all the time. I wrote before at the draft.
Read that.
They still owe Deshaun Watson like $130 million. They just wrapped one sports car around the tree, and here they go running to the lot to buy another one. This is how they operate. They operate in dysfunction. Like they aren't comfortable unless there's chaos going on around them. It's unbelievable that they just race from one situation to the next like this. I don't know. Like I had people text me who used to work in that building who no longer do the night of the draft when Shedeur was taken. That obviously it wasn't day one. It was what, day two.
Yeah.
This was a Jimmy pick. 100%. This was a Jimmy pick. Now the Browns fight back on that very loudly. They push back. They insist this was Andrew's pick. Andrew Berry wanted him. They loved the value of finding him in the 5th round. Well, it certainly doesn't look like it at this point and I'm not saying that he needs to be a starting quarterback. I'm not saying that at all. He's a project, clearly. But if you can't trust him enough with the quarterback room that looks like this, if you can't trust him enough to be the number 2 quarterback, then I'm not sure what we're doing here.
Yeah, I get the value. I certainly do, honestly, with the way that he played at CU. And I also understand that nobody is openly going to say our owner made this pick. That just doesn't happen within an organization.
Correct.
It just cannot happen.
Yes.
So you're right. You're spot on that. Before we go, and I could talk to you about this forever. It is fascinating. Maybe that's why so many column inches are getting filled. But listen, is there a part of the Deshaun Watson situation here at play? You made a massive trade and a massive contract for, let's just be frank, a very unlikable quarterback.
Yeah.
Right. And it hurt your fan base in a lot of metrics. You mentioned it. Shedeur's very likable. There's a lot to like. Is there a counter to keeping him there that you don't want to get rid of now another quarterback that is polarizing, but maybe in a very different way?
They just need a quarterback who will win. And they will be beloved. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. He could shove a nun in front of a bus, but if he wins, Cleveland will love him. It's just where the city is at right now and how desperate they are. I don't think it's Deshaun as much as it is Baker. If it's not ownership forcing him on the roster, then it's the Baker situation. The fact that, and of course that's tied to Deshaun, but. And the revisionist history on the Baker saga is fairly incredible around here. And people are up in arms and they're irate, and rightfully, like, I get it. Baker could win the MVP last year, and he was in Cleveland, and they ran him out. There was a lot more behind the scenes to that. He was incredibly immature at the time. There was just a lot going on. They weren't sure they wanted to invest all that money in a franchise quarterback. Deshaun becomes available. At the time, he's a top, whatever number you want to put on it,
Certainly.
top 5, top 8, top 10, whatever it is. They see that as their opportunity to finally get this right. They had a team that they felt was ready to contend, except at the most important position. And so Baker goes off, hits rock bottom, gets released from Carolina, leaves the Rams, and finally starts to grow up a little bit, mature a little bit, gets his life together, gets his career together, and he takes off. And I think it's fear of that more so than the Deshaun debacle. And it is a total debacle at this point.
Yeah.
I think it's just a fear of, could this guy develop elsewhere? And then 3 years from now, we're having the exact same conversation we are with Baker.
That is a fear of general managers across the league. I think you and I would agree on that. That's why Anthony Richardson is still sitting there in a Colts uniform, because they are terrified of him going somewhere else after they had that raw talent and somebody else develops him, and that could be a part of the issue. Well, I don't know if this is the last time you write about it. I'm not sure if you have one after a move is made. Not. We'll see. I'm sure it's not. Jason, this was awesome chatting with you about this. This is a fascinating topic. And maybe you're right. There is an aspect of that fear of, let's see if he develops, because what does the NFL lack? Patience. Nobody has it. And everybody seems to forget that it could exist. And right now, this is an interesting example of it.
Cut him and move on. So I guess I fall into that category of no patience either. But it's not. It's all of just the nonsense that comes with it, more so than anything that's on the field, is why I'm saying it this time.